Okay, so I want to talk about In a Violent Nature. So I watched this a while ago, but I just saw Mike and Jay talk about it on Red Letter Media, and I feel like they didn't quite do it justice. So I wanted to give my take on it. Excuse the blanket, it's very freezing in my house, and we're getting our furnace replaced. Essentially what this movie is following a Jason Voorhees type character over the shoulder, tracking him through his whole killing spree story. We start out with this really cool shot of just a necklace and a pendant on the end of a necklace hanging next to this decrepit wooden cabin type thing. And you hear these kids walk up to it, these young adults, 20-somethings walk up to it talking, "Hey, are you going to come back? We need to go, blah, blah, blah. I'll be right there." Grabs the necklace. Classic start to a slasher movie. Clearly, this is a item that means something to this killer. We already know the premise of the movie, that we're following a killer, a supernatural type killer. What happens is the camera starts to slowly pan to the left after the necklace is yoinked. Remember, we're just holding on the necklace. Hear the kids in the background, grabs the necklace, and then slowly the camera starts to pan to the right. There's a pipe, and the pipe starts to move coming out of the ground. This monster comes out of the ground. He's this big burly guy. If you've seen the trailers, you know. And he starts walking. He has one drive. He's a zombie type thing. He has one motivation, one drive, and that is to get his necklace back. It means a lot to him. What this movie lacks is a cohesive narrative, which I think a lot of people may have a problem with, but I think works in its favor as more of it almost feels like a proof of concept type movie, where let's see if we can execute this idea as best as possible. But it does make an effort to pepper in backstory, which I think they do in really cool ways and some ways that don't really hit as hard. Basically what happens is he wakes up, he goes after his necklace, he approaches these two men arguing. One of them is a cop, one of them's a hunter. He's telling him, "Hey, you need to not leave your traps in the woods because the kids, people go out there and you might snag somebody." So he's like, "Oh, screw you, cop," whatever. The monster enters the house, sees this gold necklace, doesn't quite get a good look at it. The gentleman who lives there sees him, freaks out, runs away. Monster, walks slowly after him. He never runs. He does the classic monster thing where it's just a slow. And this is important too, because this is going to be a lot of the movie. This is how he approaches the house. We literally see him come out of the ground, get up, and then look around, and then walk, and we're with him every step of the way. And it could be really monotonous, but I think it's kind of entrancing. I think it's kind of tranquil in a sense. It's very interesting, and it works better than you'd think it does on paper. So we follow the killer monster chasing this guy. He kind of is like looking back and running into the woods. Of course, he gets snatched by the trap that he was arguing, one of his traps that he was arguing about with the cop. The monster goes and kills him, goes back for the necklace, reaches at the necklace. It's not his necklace. Obviously, we know that the kids have the necklace. It's a lot of walking. This is, again, the proof of concept of we're just going to hang behind this guy. We're going to see a Friday the 13th, a Halloween type story from the point of view of Michael or Jason. It's a really interesting concept. Eventually we get to the scene where I do think that this could have been executed a little bit better, but it is the movie's attempt to give you some backstory and the way they chose to do that kind of introduces characters that we don't really need. And so it kind of makes you feel like some of the stuff that they're going to say it means more than it actually does. But essentially, just like the classic trope of this item that means a lot to this monster that wakes him up. He has a singular drive. The kids, young 20 partiers, he approaches them at night around a campfire. So he has this GPS for gold necklaces, I guess. And so he took him to the house. Wasn't that one. Now he kind of aims, gets there. At least that's what I remember. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. So he's outside of this campfire where they're all sitting around. And this is the time where we leave the third person perspective of the monster. And now we're doing kind of the Reservoir Dogs going around. And one of them goes into the backstory of this tragedy that happened and basically explains what happened to the killer. But at the same time, there's like this feud spat with a couple who is like maybe like one of the girl is like maybe sleeping with one of the other guys there, and it's like subtly hinted at. It just never comes up again. It's completely unnecessary, but you're like, okay, this seems like important information. I'm going to pay attention to this. That scene is really just a vehicle to give you the backstory to this monster. The way that they choose to do it later, I think, is way more interesting. But essentially what we have here is a campfire scene with kids drinking, partying, a little bit of a lover spat, backstory through like a haunted story from the stoner guy, it's tropey. They end up going inside. The killer follows one of the kids who decides to go out to meet some girl that he met earlier in the day that we didn't see, but he wants to go meet up with them. Killer finds him. And this is another thing that they do really interesting with this, is that the kills are gruesome, which is like, so what would you expect from a Friday the 13th or a Halloween or something like that? Once that premise is set up, people are looking for like creative, gruesome kills. Delivers, I think, for the most part. I'm not like a huge slasher gore fan. It really depends. But not really in this sense. But I thought the kills were interesting and unique and kind of like grotesque in a way where I was like, I can see what you're trying to emulate or like what you're nodding at, but also doing it in a very creative way where like you have seen these movies over and over again and you know what people are expecting. So you got to amp it up a little bit. You've seen in the trailers, he has this like hat or like this helmet type hat thing, the pullover with the big eye things. And he gets this from he drags that kid's body and uses it to crash through the glass of this display case in this museum that's kind of placed in this national park, I guess, where they're camping and everybody's staying. He gets these two hooks and this helmet mask that was used in like old firefighter by old time firefighters. So there you see kind of like him getting his classic hockey mask, his whatever. You see him getting his attire, which is cool. And basically by then it's early morning-ish, and he then leaves, heading towards the necklace again. He comes across a lake where two of the women who are staying in the cabin are swimming. They're going for a morning swim, and he kind of sees them across the way. And this is cool. I actually really like this. He just kind of walks into the water, and then you kind of don't see him anymore. They're swimming and talking. One of the girls jumps out in the water and is swimming. They get in kind of an argument while she's in the water, and the other girl walks away while Monster is, I don't know if he's like swimming down there or if he's like just like walking along the bottom of the lake. It's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. And so she goes down and she's swimming, and then all of a sudden she goes, "Ah!" You're like, oh shit, he got her. And then nothing, and then her body just kind of like, and it's really cool. It's low key. There's like no music. There's no, there's no pomp or flair or pizzazz. It's very brutal and very subtle. Not really subtle, but it's very simple. This whole movie is very simple, raw take on this whole kind of story. Then he walks out of the lake and he keeps going. He eventually, in the next scene, follows the girl who left after the argument, and she's kind of doing yoga on this cliff, and he's got the 2 hook things that he got. And so he walks up to her. She doesn't really see. She turns around. She thinks it's the girl who was swimming. Turns around, it's not. And she screams and screams. And this is one of the more crazy kills. Oh God, yeah. So he has the hooks, and he basically like shoves a hook through her stomach, punches a hole in her basically, and then takes the hook, and then hooks it into her head, and then pulls it back through her back and kind of like puts her head through her stomach, through her back. It's crazy, and it's very, there's no music. It's very gloopy and gloppy and slimy and messy, and yeah, if you don't like gore, this ain't the movie for you. It does all of those things, takes the classic Friday the 13th Halloween type movies, strips it all back, and it's just, what if this actually happened, kind of, and what if we just followed the killer? So after that, he walks back to the cabin during the day, and 2 of the men, I believe it's the boyfriend of one of the girls, and then the guy that he thinks she's like flirting with or having cheating on him with or something. So there's some tension there. They're kind of arguing. One of them wants to leave, and one of them is like, we need to stay, and they can't find the guy, the first guy who died, and so they're kind of like, we need to go look for him, or we need to leave or go get help or something like that. And the monster kind of walks up to them, and they don't see him, and he starts walking around the house. They go into the house. He ends up, the monster like puts a stick against the car and the seat and the horn, blaring the horn. The guys come out. He comes up behind them, but one of them sees him. He has a shotgun. He pops the guy, the monster. After, I think he takes a damage to his leg from an axe or a knife. Oh yeah, there's also this thing where one of them throws the keys to the car into the woods in an attempt to stop the other from leaving. And on the keys is a little red truck keychain. The monster sees this. It kind of incidentally throws it towards him. He kind of sits behind this tree. He takes his mask off. We see his face for the first time. It's gruesome and scarred and gnarly. And he kind of, like as a kid, in a kid way, plays with this toy. Then this whole pursuit happens. Car horn goes off. Guy goes out. He shoots the monster. Monster gets him with an axe in the leg. The other guy comes out and is like, oh my God, you got him. Okay, let's go. We can't find the keys. You threw them in the whatever. Let's go. And then monster wakes up, throws an axe, hits the guy, kills both of them. So now those guys are dead. Now it's nighttime again. Another man and his girlfriend have run to the ranger's cabin where the park rangers are. It's nighttime now. The monster's coming through the woods. They're kind of talking. It's nighttime. They got the overhead lamp. They're standing in front of the building. Monster's walking up to him, and the park ranger looks back, and he has a shotgun, and he sees the monster, and he says, like, do you remember me? And so this is the other part where we get a little backstory, but I think in a much more creative way. So this is kind of like Friday the 13th 2 or 3 or Halloween 2 or 3, or this is like a sequel. So there was an original instance where he came back to life searching for this necklace, and this park ranger was a part of silencing him and stopping him. And the park ranger, is part of the people who put the monster where he was at the beginning of this movie and hung the necklace there to satiate him in a way of like, no one will come get this thing. We'll leave him there. Never talk about it again. Good. We solved the problem in this like prequel story that we're just getting through this little bit of exposition through dialogue and this interaction, which I think is really smart. It's really interesting. And so, yeah, he says, do you remember me? And he keeps walking and he's like, I'm going to do it again. Shoots him. Monster falls down. And then the park ranger asks the couple to like go get some chains to wrap him up. And the monster wakes up, takes the gun away, bashes the guy. The couple runs away, and he does this whole thing with the park ranger, which is one of the things that my biggest problem with the movie was this scene, because the kill takes so long, which I get in terms of this killer, this monster wanting to seek sort of vengeance on this person who defeated him once before. But it's the first part of the movie where I think it actually is kind of boring and a little obnoxious, because it's a wood cutter machine. So it's a press, like hydraulic thing where you push a lever, and then this blade comes down and chops wood, and it's very slow, and it's done through like a pole motor, and it's very loud. And we're just kind of sitting there knowing exactly what's going to happen, like to a T, for longer than I think is really necessary. Basically cuts off his arm and then cuts off his head. But the whole time you're sitting here, you see him drag the body slowly, put the arm across the thing, and then watch it, and then slice it off. And you're like, okay, that was pretty gnarly. But then he picks him up again and puts his head in there, and you're like, okay, I know he's going to cut his head off. You know, I just saw him cut his arm off. And then you got to wait for him to put the body there, place him there, walk back to the machine, pull the lever, slowly watch it go down. And this whole time we're just sitting here with one shot, and it's just like, you know, this motor is going, and it's just a little bit like, okay, I get it. That was my biggest problem with the movie, was that scene. Again, thematically, I understand. I just don't think it worked, but he got his revenge. The couple ran into the woods. They're hiding out behind trees and trying to get to safety. The killer is now done with the park ranger, comes after him. They see him. They kind of devise this plan where the boyfriend is going to sweep around, distract him, and then run away for the woman to be able to run to safety. This fails. The boyfriend goes around. The killer catches him, axes his face into a tree, but they have the necklace, and they leave the necklace on a gas canister that they were going to use for the machine. They got it from the park ranger station, whatever. But they have this gas canister. They leave it in the middle of the woods. The woman now runs away. She sees her boyfriend die and runs away into the woods. She gets to a road. It's now daytime again. She's bloody, she's dirty, and all that stuff. And she waves down a truck, this red truck. And in this truck is a woman. She is very concerned about the girl, decides to give her a ride. Let's get the help. This is where I think you're either going to really like this movie and what it's doing, or it's going to turn you off. But at the same time, I think that if you made it this far, you probably will like it. It's hard to, I don't know. This I think is my favorite part of the movie, but also maybe the slowest and most pointless to some people. But here's what I interpret it as and why I enjoyed it. And I could be completely wrong and it could be garbage, but this is what I think of it. So she gets in the car, the woman starts giving this dialogue about her husband getting attacked by a bear in the woods. Now, it's a very long piece of dialogue. It's very, very long. And the whole time, the camera is, I would say 80% of the time, there are cuts back to the woman, but they are both shot so that the woman is on this side of the screen and there's a whole empty window in front of her. So it's kind of leading you to go, you're looking out the window. I was looking out the window, waiting to see the killer, waiting to see the monster throw something or jump out or be in front of the vehicle or something. It's shot in this very stoic, tense feeling with this empty space that you're focused on, and your eyes are constantly drawn from this empty space in the woods as it's passing you by to the main character, not the main character, but the girl as she's listening to this woman. It's this constant dialogue. So you're kind of like half listening, picking up these points, but you're very tense watching this, like, okay, I'm ready for this to happen. The killer's coming. This dialogue goes on and on and on. And obviously it's meant to be this allegory between the mindless killing of this monster and the violent nature of a bear surviving and protecting. So he and the bear, this raw force, are both existing in a violent nature. So thematically, it makes sense. It's quite boring and monotonous, I think, unless you're viewing it as this insanely tense scene where you're waiting for the killer to come. And then what happens is she just ends her speech, and we cut back to the woods, and it's just the gas tank, the gas canister, but the necklace is gone. So he really did have one goal, one mind, to get the necklace. He got it. Once he killed the boyfriend and the necklace was left there, he was not chasing her. So this tense expectation of this killer need is satiated by the necklace. And he didn't actually go back to her, chase her. He just got his necklace and then went out to do who knows what. Maybe we get a sequel or something. But I just thought that was very interesting. I thought that was fun, and I'm super okay with it. I think that's the best way to end something like this. Sure, it is not as exciting. It is not as... Unfortunately, I hate to say it because I so despise Rian Johnson, but it subverts your expectation. But I think it works so well because I was so ready to see this final kill. I think its length also kind of helped that as well, is it's quite short. So without knowing that, you're kind of expecting this movie to keep going. So I was definitely expecting another kill, but it never happens. And I love the simplicity of it. I love seeing the necklace at the beginning, hearing the voices in the background of the kids, taking the necklace, going, and then it just pans over. The camera is very purposeful. And in the end here, I've really liked the tenseness and then just the cut to the canister with no necklace. And you're like, oh, he got the necklace. He's actually not pursuing the woman, the girl. And supposedly the final girl gets away. And I just thought it was really good. And I thought some of the points that Mike and Jay brought up in Red Letter Media's review of it, not review per se, but in their top 10 horror movies of the year, that this movie kind of got talked about in ways where they maybe just forgot, because Mike did mention that it just kind of cuts to credits after the dialogue about the bear. And I think knowing that there is an extra scene, very short, but of seeing the gas canister with the necklace gone is a much better ending than just ending it without knowing. And that, he's being very lighthearted and giving studio notes that are much more exciting. And some of them I actually think are great ideas. I do think you stick to the killer the whole time. And what Jay said about the campfire scene is completely valid. I think the leaving the point of view of the killer in that last scene of the woman escaping after and getting in the truck would be more impactful if we hadn't left the view of the killer before at the campfire scene. I think the idea of sticking with him around the campfire and kind of hearing bits and pieces of it is much more impactful when the camera leaves his point of view. Anyways, I really like this movie. I would probably give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. And I think that if you're into slashers, it's a must. I think that if you're into slow, experimental indie films and are okay with gore, it's a must. And if you just don't like gore, skip it. It's not for you. It's very, very gory. I can't wait to see what this director does next. I think it's very, very inventive and interesting, and I hope that he keeps doing that. Anyways, that's all I have to say about this.